as we call on the Supreme God, Goddess, Divine Father and Mother. We call on our souls and our divine selves. And we ask today that the session is for the highest good of all, for the expansion of consciousness and in service to humanity. So be it.
So be it. Okay, so and to come back to another thing we noticed about when uh, when I have my notes here. We've got Pluto in Capricorn in 2008. Right. So just coming back to that now, we had not only did we have um not only did we have upheaval of things, we've had in the world over the last little while, we've had stepping outside of the narrative that's going on at the moment, we've had some pretty major stuff go down in the last sort of 20 years or 15 years. Um, a lot of stuff has come up, particularly about the, you know, the abuse and torture of children in organisations and things like that. I mean, we just have to look at the news at the moment to see, 750 bodies of children found in Canada, and you know, and so there seems to be, after the GFC, it's not just the GFC where we had a global financial crisis. We've had all sorts of sort of really unpleasant stuff being unearthed, and like, you can't sweep stuff under the rug forever, can you? Because eventually pardon, the term, but the pile of becomes too big. You can't sort of suppress it anymore. Again, another analogy, like trying to hold an empty esky underwater. It's a lot of energy to hide and suppress all of that stuff, and then for it to come out. So that process that is going on, you said that's going through until, when was it? 2024 or something like that.
Yeah, Pluto's in Capricorn, starts transitioning into Aquarius in 2023 and moves permanently into Aquarius in 2024. And so Pluto is very much that energy of, you can't sweep it under the carpet,
Mm.
it's got to come to light. Yeah, and so we're in the kind of last phases of that, in the last couple of years of that, when things probably will intensify, because
Yeah.
we're gonna see, we're gonna see more of that probably.
So that's really helpful, I think, for me. It's certainly helpful for me to know. So I imagine that's going to be helpful for other people to get a handle on that. What we're going through at this time, as you say, is potentially going to intensify, and not necessarily just around the one subject, right? So there could be, who knows what else is going to come out from underneath the rug,
Yeah,
right?
but it's likely to be around the themes of Capricorn, which is authority, structures, big business, government, the structures that rule our world, and so that's what we're seeing being challenged at the moment.
Right. So that's great. So we find out more, and then what happens once Pluto moves into Aquarius properly? What happens then? What will the sort of difference in energy be there, the
I
shift?
think so the idea of a Pluto or any planet really, what we call transiting or going through a sign, is to evolve, is to transform, and Pluto is about transformation, and so it's giving us an opportunity to transform our structures, to transform the idea of power, to transform the structures that we live by, to transform business, to transform government. So it's about, allowing transformation. And so when it moves into Aquarius, we're going to turn. the attention to the themes of Aquarius and transformation in that area, which is about technology, which is about brotherhood, which is about group. So we might, and there are many other themes around Aquarius as well. So the energy of transformation, and also maybe break down so that we can break through, will be applied to the Aquarian type themes, whereas at the moment we're seeing it being applied in Capricorn type themes.
Yeah. So, okay. So, technologies that are no longer serving us, hopefully, that kind of thing will transfer into uh, much more environmentally sound technologies and such like that.
Well, I think it's all about potential. So, and
Yeah.
goes back to this idea of consciousness. Yes, we could see technology being used for a whole range of wonderful things that serve humanity, that serve the collective, that serve the group. We could also see the shadow of that, where things are being, AI takes over and totally limits individual choice. And again, that comes back to consciousness. How
Let's
are we
not.
going to apply that? Let's not energize that,
Yes.
but
Here,
it,
here.
and that comes back to the point about our individual light quotient, and
Yeah.
I guess the responsibility that each of us has to um, to sort of bring that into the collective, so
Thank
that
you.
and in that way we're empowered because we can help contribute to the manifestation of the best possible outcome.
Yeah. So to bring us our intention, our thoughts, words, and deeds into alignment with focus with where we would like to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So that's cool.
Okay, Freya,
Yeah.
so I'm just cutting now for the moment. I've got an appointment at 4.
Okay.
um
How long have we got?
well, sort of
I don't know
4
what
minutes. It's nearly 4, so it's probably only.
Okay. So another little another little thing that has come up on a number of occasions in from various different angles uh, is sort of media and marketing of things, narratives, and so on. And the point in relation to that that continued to arise was the point in time where media or advertising and marketing changed. And that keeps coming back to a point sort of in, I think it's the late 1920s, where Sigmund Freud's work was taken by his nephew, Edward Bernays, and began to be applied in certain situations. For instance, oh, one of the most infamous ones was when the cigarette market was doubled by him, utilizing the principles of Freud's psychology by, say, bringing the models into a situation where there'd be news cameras and things around, and having them smoke and make, and uh, it created the appearance of it being sophisticated and acceptable for women to smoke, and therefore all of a sudden the cigarette industry's um, market doubled. It moved then out of just being a men's thing and into a women's thing. And so it was really around that time that 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 different companies, governments, anybody who's anybody, started to suss out the psychology of human beings in order to be able to present things to them in such a way that it would influence their choices. And so that started around about that time. What was going on then with planetary influences, Astarte?
Yeah, well, going back to Pluto, we're talking a lot about Pluto today. Really, that's been our focus. And so Pluto was discovered around the actually in 1930, And so this was around the time that psychology started to become sort of much more part of our practice, and part of the not so much well, perhaps the medical establishment, but it started to become something that we started to use. And this was around the time of the discovery of Pluto. And when a planet is discovered, um, the idea is that the archetypes that are contained within that planet, and let's remember that it's the astronomers that discover planets, so the scientists, and it's the astronomers that name them. So so Pluto was named, with the convention of the different Roman gods, and then the astrologers look at what's the mythology around Pluto? What meaning can we apply to this? What's the consciousness that's coming into play with the discovery of this new body that we didn't know anything about before? And so Pluto, as I said, is around about the underworld, Lord of the underworld. Um, and so the mind, the subconscious workings of the mind, is very much part of that. And
Sounds quite
so,
ominous, doesn't it? Lord of the underworld. Yeah.
yeah, that's who he was in mythology. And so, but also the underworld, what is hidden can also be resources and hidden treasure. So it's not all ominous. We have these hidden resources and these hidden treasures that we're not aware of, things that are buried. And there's can also be things like secrets or the unconscious. And so Freud was very much about exploring the unconscious. And then one of his students was Carl Jung, and Carl Jung was as very interested in astrology as well. He was interested in archetype, um, and was also a student of astrology. And so I think that's where the psychological aspect of astrology comes into play with the work of Carl Jung, and how it's sort of applied a lot today.
And so Pluto it was about, when did you say it was? About 1930
It's
that Pluto came
discovered in ni-
up into the
discovered in 1930, yeah, and that's when we saw the emergence of psychology, and also, the emergence of nuclear power, and Pluto being an archetype that is very much associated with power.
fascinating. And uh and then we went on to a nuclear war, didn't we? Well, to us, well, no, we didn't.
Well, the
Went to,
discovery of the atomic bomb, yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
production of the atomic bomb, which, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so these are some of the things that have played out since Pluto came into play. And so when we're looking back at the transits and things of Pluto, it's based on what we know of it since the 1930s.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point, because we didn't know it existed till 1930. But actually, it did exist. It's just we didn't know about it. So we can actually look back and see, well, when was Pluto? Like we said, Pluto was in Capricorn in the 1500s, around the time of the Reformation. So
Mm.
nobody knew about Pluto. There was no telescopes, or early telescopes in those days, but it could still have been affecting the way things were working, but it wasn't actually fully in our consciousness. And interestingly, since 2005, many planetary bodies have been discovered beyond Pluto. So lots and lots of discovery. So it kind of points to an acceleration in and shift in consciousness with the discovery of all these new, huge, large planetary bodies in our solar system that we were completely unaware of before.
So Pluto is truly the lord of the underworld, just hiding in plain sight for a very long time. And there's just a couple more points I'd love to touch on before we wrap it up today. Uh, one of them is that we're in the midst of a pandemic, uh, and in history we've had a lot of different pandemics that have arisen over time. Uh, So do you have something from an astrological point of view that you can share with
Yeah,
about?
yeah. Well, there was a lot of speculation around in early 2020 that something quite significant was going to happen because we know that Pluto spends a number of years in a sign, and we knew Pluto was going to be in the sign of Capricorn from 2008 to 2024. The planet Saturn, which is faster moving, spends a couple of years in each sign. Um, was also in Capricorn, and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. And so Saturn and Pluto were coming together in this what we call a conjunction on the 12th of January 2020. And there was a lot of speculation amongst astrologers what will happen. This is a very, very, very significant event and a very, very significant shift. And of course, it was around that time that we saw the
Spanish flu, wasn't it?
no, in this year, last year,
Oh,
2020. So this
2020.
about this time that we saw
This time.
COVID really start to emerge and affect all of the structures of our society worldwide. And so it sort of it intensified everything that we've spoken about. Pluto being in Capricorn and the sort of breakdown and exposure of our systems was really, really intensified by the presence of another planet, Saturn, in the same place.
Mm.
And so then we see this global outbreak of a disease, which has affected the structures of everybody, uh, the structures of all countries in the world. Um, and then on top of that, we had a lot of activity in the sign of Capricorn last year because also the planet Jupiter was in Capricorn. So Jupiter and Pluto came together as well. And historically, when those two have come together in Capricorn or in the opposite sign, which is Cancer, um, so in 1700s, there was the bubonic plague in Russia when Jupiter Jupiter and Pluto came together in Capricorn. And then the Spanish flu, which was just after the First World War, so I think it was around 1918, 1919, um, Jupiter and uh, Pluto came together in Cancer. So that as these planets these energies come together, it creates these global events which affects the structures of society all over the world. And so last year, 2020, was such a significant year because we had Pluto in Capricorn, we had Saturn in Capricorn, and we had Jupiter in Capricorn, and they all came together.
Good.
As well as at the beginning of the year, we had a number of other planetary bodies in Capricorn as well. So, it really did mark a major shift in how our world works.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how much Pluto has had to do with all of these all of these things. He keeps
Mm,
popping up, just
yeah.
popping in and going, I'm just going to shake it all up for you again and, get this out of the unconscious and into the light. Have a look at it. And what's the goal, really, isn't it? Because when, if we talk about unconsciousness, it means not conscious, not aware of. It's still part of us, but it's not something that we've realized.
Mm,
And we haven't churned it, we haven't processed it. And as far as a soul on earth's journey of coming into self-realization, self-actualization, we've got to bring everything, every part of this, unconscious and darkness and judgment and all of those things into awareness, and then learn to love it regardless of how unlovable it may first seem to us. So that, because the law of attraction's in action all of the time, isn't it? And if you push against something constantly, then it's just going to get bigger and bigger. Again, it's not a thing of really, like, let's lie down and, let, uh, you know, ourselves be steamrolled over the top of either. It's, it's about really how do we come into a place of the still point, isn't it, where there's no resistance, and then it sort of starts to shift for us personally, and then collectively as well. Um,
Mm.
and so Pluto, all right. So it's a good idea then for, it could be a great idea for people to get to know a little bit more about Pluto as a planet, just to understand uh, more about that, because I know that there's been whole books written on Pluto. I've got a couple on my shelf, and they really put you through your paces there a bit. So
Yeah, and I think, think about Pluto as an archetype, or think about the mythology of Pluto and what's the symbolism. And so astrology is really a symbolic language, and what's the symbolism, and what can we learn from that? And it's not that it's to be feared; it's to be, ultimately it's about the symbolism of Pluto is about empowerment,
mm,
transformation, and empowerment, and realization, and truthfulness, um, and so sort of um, really exposing everything that is not that is what it can do, which can be tough, and it can
great
bring
way
up
to put it.
these power, control issues, the taboo, the things that we would prefer to keep hidden, the things that we would prefer to keep in the underworld, and that includes the things that we might seem unsavory, and it can also be things that, like I said, the treasures. But sometimes we don't want to own our treasures. We don't want to own our power. We don't want to embrace that. So it can all lie there. And so Pluto is sort of it's motivating us and giving us the opportunity to explore that, so that we can be more empowered, so that we can be more authentic, so that we can be more true to who we are, really, at the highest level of expression.
And I feel like it would be true to say that I certainly know in my own lifetime, from my 20s, when I really stepped into more of my authenticity, went through a rapid awakening process, and then basically worked my tail off for years and years and years, and still do, to integrate all of that and to keep going. Um, you know, at the time when I went through my awakening back then in 1999, uh, it, it seemed to me that there was a little bit, there was a bit about chakras, there was a bit about sound healing, there's a little bit about, still people, if you said the word aura, sort of looked at you sideways and all that kind of thing. But we've really, as a globe, really done some extraordinary work in bringing what used to be put solely in the woo woo basket. As you said, it's coming back now. It's starting, there's this convergence starting to occur, where it's like, oh, yeah, so we can measure an auric field, not just through Kirlian photography, but through other sorts of means. Yes, we can measure the resonance of what's going on in a brain. We can measure resonance of all different sorts of things, and we're finding more and more ways uh, to give tangibility and credibility to uh, to all of these different vibrational ways, be it music or anything else, or energy healing, to to show how it benefits, how it can be applied, how it is regular and stable, it's grounded, it's practical. We've gone through, as a human consciousness, as a species, we really are in the space of starting to go through this great awakening, as it's coined. And what is it, from the astrological perspective, that we can we can speak to about what humanity's going through right now over the last few decades.
Yeah, and I think really what you just described was a great illustration of moving in more to an Aquarian frequency where Aquarius can be about science. It's an air sign. It's about technology, but it's also about vibration. It's about wave. It's so we might be able to measure energy. We might be able to sort of work with technologies that are very much more about energy. We're moving much more into a quantum world rather than a sort of Newtonian mechanistic world that we've been in before, and that's very much, Aquarian is this quantum world, and this is where um, the quantum theory or quantum physics or is actually starting to converge with some of the esoteric practices or that have existed over centuries but have never been proven by science. Um, Now they're starting to come together, and so I think that's quite exciting to see how that might manifest. So I wonder if this is what, as we spoke about at the beginning, as we're transitioning more and more into this frequency of Aquarius, that we might start to see more and more of that.
Well, I really, really hope we do. And, it's important, as we spoke to before, that there is always, as much as there's light, there's shadow, and that each of us who are, you know, light bearers, helping to hold the light, head this way, that we keep our focus securely on the goal of where it is that we'd like to go, what sort of world we'd like to create, so that we can all come together and create this incredible new geometry and frequency and bring more and more light in as we go. So
Yeah, and as you said at the beginning, you spoke about individual choice, having individual choice, and it's also, I think, about individual responsibility. So we can all play our part in what you've just described.
well, this has been an absolutely fascinating trip down many rabbit holes.
A trip through the ages.
A trip through the ages, and fascinating to see how those cycles repeat, and and how we can really start to get that tangible understanding of how it is that astrology works and how it plays out. It's, in unity, how it plays out from the perspective of society, consciousness, and where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And so it sounds to me like it's a pretty exciting time that we're heading into. And personally, I feel like it's an extraordinary time to be alive, to be
Mm,
really extraordinary time to be alive.
absolutely, yeah.
So thank you so much, Astarte Diana. Can you please share with everyone how it is that they can contact you and get themselves a natal chart done and get a bit more information on where they're going?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I have a website. My website is called Your Soul Potential. So YORSOUL potential.com. And so there's an email address on there. And yeah, please send me an email. And if you'd like to have some um, information on charts, or you'd like to have a chart reading or some coaching, then that's something that we can discuss.
Awesome. And you also run a new moon monthly meditation and sort of chat about where we're headed each month. Can you share
Yes, that's
that?
right. Parvati and I run a new moon meditation, so on or just before each new moon. So it's not going to be the same day each month. We actually follow the moon cycle on this one rather than the calendar. We run a meditation. So we talk a little bit about the sign that the moon's in. We talk about the chart of this particular new moon, and then we do some experiential work and some meditation to sort of not just experience this through our heads and through logic, or but also to get an experience of what that might be like. and to set intentions, because the new moons are all about setting intentions. And we offer that via Zoom. Um, and you can book that through Try Booking. So if you go onto the trybooking.com website and look for dark new moon meditation, you'll see the booking details there.
How exciting. I can just say to everyone, I can highly recommend any work that you could do with Astarte Diana or Parvati Sundari. They're both extraordinary women and extraordinary magic people, miracle people. They're incredible. So jump in,
Oh,
jump on board, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights into all of those things. And we'll check back in with you again down the track for another interview to see how things are playing out as we go.
thank you very much. It's very generous, Freya Savitri, and thank you everybody for listening.
Bye for now.
Bye.